Hey guys, so as the 2022 midterm candidates become clearer and clearer, I want to take a look at some political forecasts for the 2022 Senate races as well as some polling numbers for the midterms. So I want to take a look at the Cook Political Report. This, of course, is one of the main political forecasts, and they're not exactly the best in terms of how accurate they are, but sometimes they do pretty well, especially with their classifications. So they currently have this classification right here. I also want to take a look at the forecast from Sabato's crystal ball. So this is their projected map, and I'll go through that in a lot more detail in just a couple moments here. I also want to take a look at some of the polling, and before we get started, make sure you join my Discord server if you haven't, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. So taking a look at the Cook Political Report here, there are essentially many states that are very solid for each party. So for the Democratic Party, they have solid seats in many of these states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. And for the Republicans, you have this whole list of other solid GOP senators who will, be easily reelected. It doesn't matter if the seats are open or anything. If you have retiring Republicans in Missouri and Alabama, they're going to go to the Republican Party just because of how Republican the states are. So in the Democratic Party, they have no retirees yet, so that's something good. Incumbents do typically almost always do better, unless they're really horrible. I mean, so Lindsey Graham as well as Susan Collins were able to win re-election in 2020 as incumbents. So for these solid seats, this will give the Democrats 46, and then filling in the solid Republican seats, this will give them 44 seats. I believe if you give them all of them, Iowa will also be on that list. So 44 seats that are solid for the Republican Party here, one more 45. All right, so that's 45 solid seats for the GOP to 46 for the Democrats. Now, there are a couple of likely seats for both parties. For the Republicans, there's only one, that is the state of Florida, and then for the Democrats, it's the states of New Hampshire and Nevada. So New Hampshire, Nevada, 7 points for Joe Biden in 2020, Nevada 2.4%, and both of these individuals are incumbent Democrats. For the Republicans, the state of Florida, of course, Trump won the state by 3.4% in 2020, and Marco Rubio won re-election in 2016 by over 8 points. So Marco Rubio and the Republicans are definitely doing well here in the state of Florida. So if you look at the two Democratic seats, these are New Hampshire and Nevada. I think definitely New Hampshire and Nevada will be closer than Florida, but the race ratings here, they have them both as likely. So in New Hampshire, it's really whether or not the governor, Chris Sununu, is going to run. He is, of course, a Republican governor of a Democratic state. You see a lot of that occurring in the Northeast. So for Chris Sununu to run, I think that it's pretty likely that he does run. I think 2022 would be a great year for him to run. It's a Republican wave year. He's running against Maggie Hassan and not Jeanne Shaheen, which would benefit him as well. He is leading the polls by a very small amount. However, once his campaign starts, his popularity is definitely going to drop in the state. In the state of Nevada, you have Catherine Cortez Masto, who I think definitely has a higher chance of winning than Maggie Hassan. And then Florida, Marco Rubio, of course, I really can't see him losing. I don't know why I put Georgia. Georgia's obviously not on there, so Georgia is not, going to be a solid Republican seat at all. But taking a look at the state of New Hampshire in 2016. So this was Maggie Hassan's first election. She was able to defeat incumbent Kelly Ayotte. So for Ayotte, she first won in 2010. She won the Senate election in 2010, won 60% of the vote. I believe she's also a former governor of the state. While in 2016, you have Maggie Hassan. She was the governor of the state as well before Chris Sununu when she was term limited. And then, of course, the governors in the state get reelected every 2 years in New Hampshire. But Maggie Hassan was able to very narrowly win with 48% of the vote to Kelly Ayotte's 47.8%. Now, this might look bad, but Kelly Ayotte was the incumbent, so that definitely, makes her win, pretty impressive for Maggie Hassan, defeating an incumbent Republican in 2016 when, Hillary Clinton only won this state by 0.3%. So definitely, I think that Maggie Hassan isn't that weak of a candidate. Running against Chris Sununu, another Republican that is popular in the state, I think definitely would be a little bit more difficult for her than against Kelly Ayotte, but I think that she'll probably be able to hold through it. She is the incumbent, and Democrats are definitely more prevalent in New Hampshire than Republicans. In the state of Nevada, this is Catherine Cortez Masto. I think that she's a pretty strong candidate overall. There's nothing really that bad against her. and I think that she will do all right. I mean, as an incumbent, she won her first seat in 2016, of course. Before this was Harry Reid's seat. He was, of course, the former Democratic leader in the Senate. He retired in 2016, and so that's why this seat was open. And Catherine Cortez Masto, of course, won it by around a 3% or 2.4% margin. That's typically what Democrats have been doing here. I mean, honestly, Democrats have been pretty flat in Nevada. They won Nevada in 2016 on the presidential level and the Senate level by 2.4%. Joe Biden won here by 2.4% as well. So not too much of a decrease. Of course, this state was very, very good for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. But the state is still more Democratic. It's like New Hampshire. Although both parties can technically win, there's definitely a little bit more of a bias towards the Democratic Party. In the state of Florida, I would say the opposite is true. It's more or less of a toss-up, but Republicans definitely are favored here. They control the government here. Every single elected official from Florida, the majority of them are basically all Republicans. So this is now 46-48. So Democrats at 48, Republicans at 46. And then taking a look at some other seats, the lean seats here, you have Ohio, which is open, and Wisconsin, which is Ron Johnson's seat. And then for the lean Democratic seats, you have Mark Kelly in Arizona, and then Raphael Warnock in the state of Georgia. So taking a look at the state of Ohio. So Ohio, this is Rob Portman's seat. Rob Portman is still currently, serving the Senate from Ohio, but he will not be running for re-election in 2022. He announced that a couple months ago, and, his reasoning being how hard it was to get things through the Senate in the state that is currently in, just with all the partisanship that occurs in it. So Rob Portman not running for re-election in 2022. Ron Johnson, whether or not he runs for re-election is still up in the air. He announced in 2016 that he would not be running for re-election in 2022, so this would be his third term if he runs. However, Ron Johnson did say that he, took those words back, and right now he's saying that it would be his preference that he does not run for a third term in 2022. But Ron Johnson, he's a pretty strong Trump supporter, and if you look at the state of Wisconsin in 2016, Ron Johnson was able to win by a pretty strong margin of 3.4%, considering that Trump won the state by less than 1%. That 3.4% margin is pretty impressive, but he did run against Russ Feingold, who isn't exactly the best candidate. 2010, he ran against him as well. This was his first election, and he won by a little bit of a stronger margin of 4.9%. And remember, 2010, I mean, this really was an impressive win for Ron Johnson. 2008, Barack Obama wins Wisconsin by over 10 points. So really, this win, in Wisconsin for Ron Johnson, his wins have been pretty strong. But 2022, there's a very, very high chance that he does lose, even if he does run for re-election. If Democrats can nominate someone good there, but if he does not run, I think it's definitely an issue because this is a Democratic state on the presidential level. Ron Johnson is serving with a Democrat along his side from the state of Wisconsin, and the governor of Wisconsin is also a Democrat. So this will definitely be an issue for Ron Johnson, even if he does run, and if he doesn't, that'll be even a bigger problem for the GOP. So these two states you have are currently lean Republican states. I think Ohio is definitely lean. It's going to be lean to likely. I think the Republicans are, obviously going to win here in Ohio. It's not going to be that huge of a margin, but I really can't see it going to a Democrat unless Democrats can somehow find someone really strong in Ohio. But for Wisconsin, I think it's a lot more of a toss-up and definitely something that the GOP should be worried about. Now, for the Democratic Party, they have two lean seats. These are the seats in Arizona and North Carolina. So if you look at Arizona, this is the seat currently held by Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly, first elected in 2020. He defeated Martha McSally, who was, of course, appointed, a year earlier to fill the vacancy left by John McCain. So John McCain, the 2008 Republican presidential nominee, of course, he lost by a pretty large margin, but he was still pretty popular in Arizona, and he, of course, passed away in 2018. So Martha McSally was appointed by the governor, but she lost a previous Senate bid against Kyrsten Sinema in 2018, so she was appointed after that. So she finally was able to be a senator, but then she comes 2020, she has to run for re-election because she was appointed. This was a special election, and she loses to Mark Kelly. So she's lost to both Mark Kelly and Kyrsten Sinema on the Senate level in Arizona, and I think that she will really never be nominated to something like this again. I think Democrats would dream to have Martha McSally nominated once again. That's just not going to happen. Mark Kelly was a pretty strong candidate. He, of course, did much better than Joe Biden. His margin here was larger than Joe Biden's by over 2%. And Mark Kelly was a former astronaut. He's the one that did those twin experiments with his twin brothers. So, yeah. So Mark Kelly, I think, definitely is a strong candidate for Arizona. And then for Warnock, of course, is the incumbent in Georgia. So Raphael Warnock defeated Kelly Loeffler. So this is another Republican that was appointed. So these two appointed Republicans, Martha McSally and Kelly Loeffler, these were definitely some weak appointments. Kelly Loeffler didn't even really have anything to do with the state. She's from Illinois, I believe. So for Kelly Loeffler, she lost against Raphael Warnock in the runoff. She lost 48.96 to 51.04. So Raphael Warnock defeated Kelly Loeffler by over 2% in Georgia. I mean, this was a race in which Georgia had not had a Democratic senator in over 3 decades, and Kelly Loeffler was the first one to give it up. And then, of course, you saw Jon Ossoff defeat David Perdue. So Perdue and Loeffler, they're never going to be the candidates here ever again. The state is just done with Kelly Loeffler, especially the Republicans there, and she didn't even come out and object to the electoral college voting. She didn't even say anything negative about it after the Capitol insurrection. So she essentially lost the Trump vote there. She started this whole voting initiative for the GOP, just like Stacey Abrams, except the opposite of that, getting Republicans to turn out. But it's honestly quite a joke, and nothing is really going to come out of that. And David Perdue has, kind of signaled that he was going to run, and then he, took that back, and it's pretty unlikely that David Perdue runs for another term. He, of course, did better, but I really don't think that Republicans are going to want to nominate him again. But for Georgia, it's very likely that they nominate Doug Collins. So Doug Collins right now, he is the one that most Republicans are eyeing. He, of course, ran. This was a more competitive race for the GOP because Kelly Loeffler didn't win. She was only, someone that was appointed. So that makes the race more competitive for an incumbent. Doug Collins ran against both of them. Of course, he came up short, but he actually did pretty well. He did just 5% worse than the incumbent Republican, but they split the vote. That's why there was that runoff. So for Doug Collins, I think that he's an all-right candidate. He's a Trumper against Raphael Warnock. Warnock still leads over Collins in the polls, but we'll see what happens there. So I do think definitely that the Democrats in these seats have the advantage. I don't know why I gave the Democrats North Carolina. If you notice that, I apologize. It's Georgia, so it's these seats that will give Democrats 50, and these that will give Republicans 48. And as long as Democrats hold on to these seats, it's good for them. The issue right now for the GOP is the seats in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. These are the toss-up seats of Pennsylvania and North Carolina, both currently held by Republicans. Richard Burr in North Carolina and Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania. I think definitely North Carolina is a little bit more solid, so I'm actually going to give North Carolina as a tilt seat for the GOP, so this actually shies away a little bit from the Cook political report. But if you look at the Sabados crystal ball here, you have North Carolina as a lean state for the GOP along with Wisconsin, and then Florida and Ohio are likely Republican states. So essentially the same thing, except Wisconsin, North Carolina are really the closest Republican seats. Well, for the Democrats, it's Arizona and Georgia. So for North Carolina, I think that if they can field someone well, they can definitely do well there. But right now, the candidates that aren't exactly the best. For the Democratic Party, they have Jeff Jackson, who is a member of the state Senate in North Carolina, while for the GOP, they have Mark Walker as the #1 nominee right now. He is currently unemployed, I believe. He doesn't have a job in the government, and he decided to not run for another seat in the House of Reps in 2020, and basically he was eyeing his 2022 Senate campaign. So Mark Walker is definitely somebody that is running, while Laura Trump, she also signaled that she was going to run, and she, of course, is the daughter-in-law to Donald Trump. I think that would definitely help her if she can get Trump's support. I think that would really mean a lot, and she's currently not polling, but her chances are currently the second highest, and I think that if she wins this nomination, it'll be a disaster for the Republican Party. Laura Trump, if she wins, she is not going to defeat Jeff Jackson in the Senate race here. So it's currently expected to be Jeff Jackson versus Mark Walker, but I think there's a lot more room for change on the Republican level here. So this will give the Republicans 49. Let's say they do win North Carolina. They nominate Mark Walker. He goes on to win by a narrow margin. You have Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the real issue for the Republican Party. If you look at Pat Toomey, so Pat Toomey is a retiring Democrat here, and in 2016, he won this seat very, very narrowly by 1.5%. 2010, he won it by 2%. So Pat Toomey was still able to win here in a state that typically has voted for the Democratic Party. Of course, 2016, this was a Trump state, but 2010, he really did do pretty well here. But for Pat Toomey, I mean, he's an incumbent. He's pretty popular there. He does shy away a little bit from the Republicans a little bit more. I think he appeals to more independents and Democrats in the state. He did vote to impeach Donald Trump the second time, not the first time, but the second time, and he has been against everything that happened at the Capitol insurrection. So Pat Toomey has, he's worked with the Democrats a little bit more than many of the Republicans, but he decided to retire in 2022, and I think that Republicans, they really are having a lot of trouble finding someone good in Pennsylvania, while the Democrats, they have essentially found who they're going to nominate. If I can find it on this list for Pennsylvania. So for the state of Pennsylvania, it's currently expected to be John Fetterman, who is the lieutenant governor of the state. So as you can see, John Fetterman has a 71-cent share of winning in the state of Pennsylvania. So right here, John Fetterman, 71. While for the Republican Party, you have, basically it's pretty mixed up right now. There's many different candidates that are running, but the chances for all of them are pretty low. So it's pretty unclear as to who the Republicans will nominate in Pennsylvania. You have Donald Trump Jr. on there as well. But for the Democratic Party, you have John Fetterman, who I think is definitely the strongest candidate in the race. And for John Fetterman, if he does win, I think he will do very, very well, and he is very likely to win his seat. And that is why many of these forecasts have Pennsylvania as the toss-up 2022 on the Sabados crystal ball here as well as a toss-up. So this really is the issue for the Republican Party. Democrats are definitely favored here a little bit. In the betting odds, they're doing pretty well in Pennsylvania as well. If you just look at the numbers for the Pennsylvania Senate race, if I can find it here. For the state of Pennsylvania, it is currently, I believe, it's around the 60s for the Democrats. Yeah, so 61-cent share the Democrats win in Pennsylvania to 39 for the GOP. So definitely taking a look at this, it's 51-49 right now for the Senate. This is my map. I think definitely that Pennsylvania will make the difference for the Democratic Party. And in this case, with Pennsylvania and the strong Democratic candidate there, they can afford to lose a state. They can lose either Georgia or Arizona, and they will still hold on to the U.S. Senate. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like this video down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below which party you think will win the 2022 Senate races. Join Discord server if you haven't, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.